What is going on, guys? It's Meui here, back with another First Descendant video, and today we're going to be going over the Afterglow build that I've been working on. Now, as far as this weapon goes, I do think it is the best boss sniper at this current moment. As you can see, I have no copies on it right now, but I am working on crafting them all, but I wanted to get this video out. The crafting is going to take a little while, but it is very important that you max out the copies on this. Now, essentially what this gun does is every time you hit a weak point, you are going to do a lot more damage to whatever you hit the weak point of, and this buff does stack. So if you keep hitting the weak point on, say, an intercept boss, it's going to stack over and over and over up to 6 times, and it's going to give you extra weak point damage as well as reload time. And then every time you shoot anything that's considered a boss in the game, whether it is the weak point or not, it's going to give you a crit hit rate boost on that shot. So you get a flat amount of extra crit rate every time you shoot, say, an intercept boss. The reason maxing this gun out is so important is because that 12.5% crit rate is actually going to go up to 22.5%. Now, that is multiplicative, so keep that in mind, but this gun has a ridiculously high base crit rate to start with, so that ends up being a bit over 10% extra crit rate every time you shoot a boss. And then getting those copies is also going to give you 20% more fire rate back. Now, I don't find the fire rate to be too much of an issue, but it does help with that. And the last thing you get from those copies is more effective range, so you'll be able to shoot things from further without as much damage drop off. So as far as this gun's purpose, it is definitely meant for bossing. You can obviously use it out in the open world on random mobs and stuff, but you're going to get insane value out of this from actually using it on bosses. And before I get into the attributes and the modules, we can look at some of the gun stats real quick, and you'll see here we have a base crit rate of 50%, which is absurd. We have a fire crit hit damage multiplier base of 2 times, and we have a weak point damage base of 1.8 times. So all of those are really high. We are going to be using that when we're building this out. So first, I'll go over the attributes here. Now, I don't have the exact attributes I want, and that is because it is super expensive to re-roll, but I'm going to go over this with you guys and tell you what I would change here. So obviously, first, you definitely want to have firearm attack. That is going to just scale our base up, which is then multiplied by all our modifiers like crit, weak point, etc. But not only this will actually play into one of the modules that I put on the gun as well, so I'll refer back to this when I get there. Now, the next role is bonus firearm attack versus Colossus. I do think this gun's absolute main purpose is for bossing because of its passive, so I would definitely recommend going for a Colossus role on this. I think it shines in Colossus fights. And then of course, we're going to look for a firearm critical hit rate roll because our base crit rate is so high. You absolutely want to get this. That 10% translates to over 5% extra crit rate, so very important. Now, this last roll, you can roll weak point damage, you could roll firearm crit hit damage. Now, they are pretty similar, and that is because your crit rate, unless you're using something like Valby or Enzo, isn't going to quite be 100%, and the actual crit hit damage roll that you can get at max is about 18%, while the weak point is a little over 11%. So either of these is totally fine. I would have preferred to have the crit hit damage just because it feels more consistent to me, but weak point damage here is totally fine as well. Now, if for whatever reason you don't plan on using this for intercept fights, you could replace the bonus firearm attack versus Colossus with the firearm critical hit damage, and then you could have weak point and critical hit damage. All right, so let's get into these modules here. So we'll start with the base damage modules. We always go with rifling reinforcement as well as action and reaction. You're not going to really feel the recoil on this gun. Our other flat rate mod is going to be electric enhancement. Now, getting back to what I said about the firearm attack roll on the gun itself, that is going to scale our firearm attack up, which is this value right here, which then scales the value of the electric enhancement up as well. Now, electric enhancement is going to add flat damage to our gun. Not only this, it's also going to add an effect where if we proc our electricity, which if you look here is a 33% chance, which is pretty good, it's going to put an electric dot on the boss itself, which actually does a decent amount of damage. But on top of all of that, it also applies a small defense debuff to the boss, which is going to make subsequent shots hit harder. So we're just getting flat damage off of this. We're getting a dot proc at a 33% chance, and we are getting a defense debuff on the boss at a 33% chance as well. So it's just very good mod. It synergizes very well with this because we have a high attribute status effect trigger rate. Now, the next thing we want to look at obviously is crit, because this gun has insane base crit values. So we're going to go with better insight to get that flat crit rate and better concentration to get that flat crit hit damage. And we are also going to pick up concentration priority. Now, obviously you could see on high power weapons, this mod does not scale nearly as high as it does on general rounds, but still absolutely worth taking on this gun. You're not going to be reloading very much on this gun, and you can always do a reload cancel by rolling. Then our last crit mod, we're going to go with Insight Focus for some extra crit rate and extra crit hit damage. Now, there is a flex option here. If you don't mind dropping some burst damage for a little bit more consistency, you can swap out Insight Focus here for Edging Shot. You can see the DPS is nearly identical. The only caveat to this is that you're going to have to catalyze this last slot here. I tried to save you guys at least one catalyst here, but if you want to have Edging Shot as a flex option, you will need to add an additional catalyst here. Now, if you're using something like Valby, Enzo, or Blair with his crit rate buff, do not swap in Edging Shot because you are going to go above 100% crit rate with just having Insight Focus anyways with those particular characters, so it's not worth actually putting Edging Shot in. All right, and the last thing we're going to look at is our weak point damage. Now, we know the passive scales our weak point up. This gun has a very high weak point base, so we definitely want to put more weak point damage into it. So of course we're going to take weak point sight just for that flat weak point damage. And as for our purple mod, we're going to take focus fire here. Now you can see I have focus fire at level 10 currently. That is because I wanted to save you guys and myself a catalyst here. Now you can also change this so that you have a level 10 insight focus and then a level 11 focus fire. That is fine as well. The reason I chose focus fire is simply because I didn't have a copy of insight focus to be able to level up to 10. So either one is fine. There's not going to be a huge difference in damage. Pick one of them, make sure it's level 10 so that you can fit everything else in. And for our last mod, we're going to go with weak point expansion. This mod is incredibly consistent and incredibly powerful. You could swap in strengthen first shot here if you want to, but I would only use this on something like Sharon if you're building around camouflage, because you can go camouflage, reload, shoot. But typically I would not recommend this because it is only after reloading, so you're going to have to reload every 10 seconds and you don't have a lot of ammo on this gun anyways. So generally I would just recommend going with weak point expansion. And speaking of not having a lot of ammo, there's actually a little swap you can do here if you're having trouble with that. We can actually take out this electric enhancement if we're having trouble with ammo or if we need more ammo for whatever reason, and you can put in something like expand high power magazine. Now obviously I don't have this maxed out, but this will give you a lot more ammo at the start of an intercept fight. And in the open world, you could use one of the round charge improvements to help you keep your ammo up for this gun while you're using it out in the open world. I would not recommend using that for bossing, but if you're using it in missions and stuff, that's definitely a valuable swap in. Now, I would definitely not swap in fire rate. Once you actually max the gun out, you're gonna have plenty of fire rate to where it won't matter, and adding a fire rate mod is just going to be complete overkill because it does not affect the time it takes to scope out and in between shots. So fire rate, I just wouldn't recommend modding it on this particular gun. Now, this gun is very powerful on any descendant, but it does have a couple descendants that it synergizes really well with. So like I previously mentioned, something like Valby, Enzo, Blair, whoever has a internal crit rate buff can push the gun to 100% crit rate, which is just ridiculously powerful. And then also this gun synergizes beautifully with Sharon because of her active camouflage. Every time that you use that, you get 100% extra damage on your next shot when you exit camouflage. So you can see this mod setup here. I obviously don't have Karen built out right now, but this would kind of be your baseline to get a really low cooldown on your camouflage. And then you would obviously, once you build survival on top of this, and your gameplay loop would be go into camo, shoot the boss in a weak point, go into camo, shoot the boss in a weak point. Now this gun does synergize beautifully with Glay as well, and that is because you can get infinite ammo on it. So Glay is also a great option for using this gun with, on top of being able to use things like Annihilation Set and getting extra firearm attack from that, Walk a Tightrope and getting extra firearm attack from that, and then shot focus as well. Now, if you are using this gun on Glay, do not use it with Massacre. That is because the Massacre will actually take away the passive. All right, and I'll show you guys just a couple damage numbers here. So we'll give them a headshot. You can see that's 3 million with the weak point sight. And you can also see that lightning dot that appears on top of their head that does extra damage. That means you have the defense debuff active on them for a couple seconds. Now, without the extra 140% weak point from our mod, you get 1.7 million. We'll do a couple body shots here. So 600k crit and 169 without a crit or weak point. So you can see how important it is that you are hitting weak points with this gun, and the crit is obviously going to hit a lot harder, but your crit rate is so high that most of your shots are going to be critting anyways. But make sure you are hitting weak points as much as possible. And we can check out these numbers with Sharon's buff. So I'm going to go into camouflage here, and you can see that's hitting almost twice as hard. So 5.5 million. We do it again without the weak point buff, still 3.2 million. 1 million without a weak point. But anyways, you guys can see that this synergizes insanely strong with Sharon. Again, unfortunately, I don't have her built out very well, so I'm not using her for bossing because I'll pretty much get one shot. But if you invest into her and this gun, you can blow bosses up. Anyways, guys, that is it for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching. Also, thank you to my actually first and only current patron. I'll throw his name up on the screen here. Appreciate the support so much. I'm going to leave the link of my Patreon I started recently in the description below. Thanks so much for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next one.